Welcome back to another episode of the Lonely Liberal Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Zankin, and I'm so happy to have you on this lovely Wednesday. And my God, is today lovely when compared to yesterday, Tuesday. Jesus, what a stressful day. I don't know about you, but waking up to the President of the United States threatening genocide on a country was not how I like to start my week. And then couple that with his Easter, rant and raving. We had a pretty brutal few days. So if you've been pretty stressed, I'm right there with you. The amount of times I got on here, set up, ready to go, rant and rave, so many times. But I bit my tongue because I wouldn't have said anything coherent. And here we are. So we're going to be talking about this ceasefire. I mean, my God, right? Trump has said this is a total and complete victory for the United States. Yet at the same time, you have Iranians cheering in the streets saying they've defeated America. We've done it. So who's right? Because they both can't be. And it is also worth noting that the ceasefire, which has thankfully prevented his insanity, has already been broken by Israel. It lasted approximately 6 hours until Israel started bombing Beirut in Lebanon. So that's great. The country that basically lobbied the United States to get into this war blew up the ceasefire that he effectively risked civilization as we know it to get. So would I call that winning? No, I'd call it being used. But let's see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being a negative lib, right? Some of you probably are thinking. So what we're going to talk about is how we got here, what the ceasefire actually entails, what has happened in the hours since, and where we go next. So it's a lot to talk about. So we might as well get to it. But before we do, make sure you'll like and subscribe. It really helps the show out, and I appreciate you. All right, let's do it. All right, before we jump into the last couple of days, I guess, which feels like a year's worth of drama, but it's actually been 3 days, I think it is important to understand how we got here and a little bit of context. I won't belabor it because, if you've been following this, you may know some of this, but many of you haven't because global affairs is stressful. So, for those who don't know, the U.S. has had active negotiations with Iran going back basically a year. So, for the last year, they've been negotiating ways to either, reduce the sanctions on Iran, reduce the amount of uranium they're enriching, and again, some additional context. Remember, Obama had originally negotiated a deal with Iran to do just that, but Trump had torn it up in his first term, so they were kind of back at the table because Trump says he could negotiate a better deal. That was the context. So this had been being mediated by Oman, another Middle Eastern country, and their foreign minister literally the day before this war had started, that there had been a major breakthrough in negotiations. Basically, what Oman has reported was Iran had agreed to never stockpile enriched uranium ever again, have full verification of international organizations, and to irreversibly downgrade enriched uranium, so some that has already been enriched, to the lowest level possible. In the words of the Omani foreign minister, peace was within reach. So it sounds like war was not going to happen, right? Well, unfortunately, our dear president is highly influenceable, right? So the Washington Post has reported that both the Saudi Arabia's crown prince and Israel had multiple calls with Trump to attack, right? So basically, in short, both Saudi Arabia and Israel lobbied Trump hard to attack Iran at this time because they said, oh my God, this is the opportune time. You got to do it, yada, yada, yada. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio basically confirmed this, right? This is his direct quote. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that we would participate in an attack against American forces, and we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them, we would suffer high casualties. So, what does this mean? Israel is going to do something, we might as well get involved because if we don't, something bad could happen, right? So, in other words, Israel was going to attack Iran regardless, and the U.S. joined ahead. Okay, does that make sense? And again, Netanyahu himself, we can use the man's words. Netanyahu, for those who don't know, the prime minister of Israel. He said, Our partnership with the U.S. allows us to do what I have yearned to do for 40 years. And again, I think that's it. Netanyahu has been dreaming of attacking Iran for the last 40 years. And I think we've known that. I mean, everyone who's been following this knows he's been saying Iran is a week away, right, from nuclear attacks. That's been his big kind of slogan, I guess, over the last 40 years. So, hooray, he gets his dream. And yeah, so basically, all of this has said that Trump basically had gone into the negotiations with Iran saying, this is nonsense. We want war. So they wanted war. So effectively, from all we can tell, at least what's been reported, the U.S. wasn't really negotiating in good faith because of all these people in Trump's ear that have got him to think this certain way. Okay. And weirdly enough, there's another actor involved, and it's one that we haven't talked about, and maybe it's because there hasn't been a natural disaster in Texas recently for him to flee. But Ted Cruz, weirdly enough, has a big role to play in potentially not only the beginning of this war, but also the potential ceasefire that just got brokered. And it all started when Tucker Carlson had Ted Cruz on his show a few months ago. You may have seen the clip where Tucker, famous Fox News host who then got removed from Fox because of the Dominion voter fraud scandal, saying that the voter machines were broken and that's why Trump lost and all that nonsense. So he ended up getting outed after that and kind of became a podcaster, right? Like kind of like this, right? Just a more successful version of it because he has a way bigger following. So he had Ted Cruz on, and of course, Ted Cruz started beating his chest as, this pro-Israel hawk, saying he's the loudest cheerleader of Israel and the U.S. needs to focus. And Tucker is very famously not for that. He's a very isolationist guy, protectionist guy. He doesn't like when U.S. money is spent anywhere. So, full stop. So he was criticizing him, and the big kind of famous line was Tucker asked Ted how many people live in Iran. He had no idea. And the famous line said, you don't know the population of the country you're seeking to topple, which was the big click. That was the clip, right? And Tucker Carlson made Ted Cruz look like an idiot. And he's mission accomplished. Ted Cruz is an idiot. And of course, Ted Cruz then later said, Carlson is the single most dangerous demagogue in America. And this is actually him being a, pawn for Iran and blah, blah, blah. And honestly, Tucker Carlson's interview with Vladimir Putin was weird a few years ago where he basically said Russia was paradise, and go watch that if you want to know. So I'm not even sure about where Tucker's allegiances lay, but he's right about this, 100%. You need to know basic facts about a country if you want to topple its regime. I think we can all agree with that. Well, I guess Ted Cruz wasn't. And all of a sudden, we start hearing reports that Ted Cruz was one of the main voices in Trump's ear saying, Iran isn't negotiating in good faith. They're liars, blah, blah, blah. You need to attack, attack, attack. So he was basically echoing the stuff that Netanyahu and the Saudis were saying. So interesting stuff. But what's really interesting is when Trump went AWOL on Easter, right? Easter morning, we'll read it in a second, like saying crazy, crazy stuff. All of a sudden, Carlson started looking a lot more reasonable, right? So what happened? So on Easter Sunday, you probably saw this, but just in case you didn't, Trump posted on social media, because that's the state of affairs right now, Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one, in Iran. Open the effing straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. And then, of course, Tuesday morning, he led off the day with the tweet that said, a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. So there's no way around it. Genocidal threats from the President of the United States. This got commentary from literally everybody other than the GOP. Even the Pope said something. The Pope called it truly unacceptable and basically begged for dialogue. And thank you, Pope. Pope Leo, good one. But interesting enough, Tucker Carlson also really, really hated this. Rightfully. I mean, obviously, he should hate this. Everyone should hate this. He delivered a 43-minute monologue calling it evil, urging military officials to defy orders. You also had people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I know is on the outs with MAGA because her and Trump have been fighting, but she also called it evil and madness, and she actually demanded the 25th Amendment, which is the amendment that says the president can be removed from office if he's deemed unfit. Candace Owens, another Republican commentator, called Trump a genocidal lunatic. Alex Jones, another conservative commentator, called what he had said the definition of genocide. And they're all right. And what's interesting about these guys, and again, just a little side note, we have seen that there have been some conservative talking heads, right, who have just gone along with Trump even as he's gone back on every single campaign promise. We're seeing it. Some of them are just doubling down. And effectively on top of that, the entire GOP is doubling down. On the other side, you are seeing some of these podcasters committing to their original bit. And again, I don't agree with them at all. At all. Those guys, none of those guys I just listed, I really agree with in any shape or form. However, you can at least start to see that they actually believe the stuff they're saying, or at least they're more willing to commit to their talking points, which is better than always lying, which is the unfortunate low bar that our Congress sets. And I'm not alone in thinking this. Representative Ro Khanna, the congressman who co-signed the Epstein Transparency Act with Tom Massey, he credited Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Coulter, who I just mentioned, for really pushing Trump to have the ceasefire. He said, the quote-unquote, Congress barely made a whimper. And I agree. Ro, you are correct. Once again, Ro Khanna really coming out of this last year and a half as one of the true leaders in the Democratic Party. He needs to be more front and center because he seems to really understand the assignment. But anyways, this is all monologue and background, so you can understand now that the guardrails of American democracy are now Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene. You can sit with that for a second. But let's go into this 10-point ceasefire. So there was all this 10-point, 15-point. Everyone's talking plans for the ceasefire. The one that they ended up agreeing on was a 10-point plan, and Trump called it workable. So it must be pretty good because, remember, before the war started, Iran had agreed to quite a generous agreement. They agreed to never stockpile enriched uranium, full verification of international organizations, and to irreversibly downgrade all of their enriched uranium. So that was what we had before. So this 10-point plan must be really, really good for the U.S. if Trump calls it a big victory, right? Well, this is the deal. The U.S. commits to non-aggression. Iran retains control of the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. accepts the current uranium that's enriched. All sanctions on Iran are currently lifted. All UN and IAEA resolutions terminated. IAEA is the nuclear watchdog. War damages that have been accrued to Iran should be paid by the U.S., and all U.S. combat forces must withdraw from the region. All right. I want you to compare that to what we had literally before this conflict even started. I'm not even comparing it to the Obama deal, which was even better than what we had last year, right? So, I'm just comparing it to before the war, before February, okay? It's a joke. It's literally a joke. And not only that, that's all we've got. So basically, I don't know what to tell you. We've basically said Iran gets to do everything they were doing and more than what we started when we started this war, because now we have to pay Iran back for blowing up their crap. And so this ceasefire, I don't know. I'm not an expert in ceasefire negotiations, but just from first bluff, looks like it was Irani favored. It only lasted 6 hours, at least with Israel. So this deal was brokered by Pakistan, which, again, speaks to where the U.S. is in the world stage right now, that they need to rely on Pakistan to negotiate ceasefires for them, which, hats off to Pakistan. No disrespect to them. It just, you would expect the United States to be a leader in diplomacy and human rights. But yeah, fortunately, that's gone. So in this deal, it specifically says Lebanon and elsewhere is effective immediately. So Lebanon was a part of this. Yet Netanyahu said, no, and they immediately started bombing Lebanon because they can't apparently help themselves from bombing Lebanon. They've struck now more than 100 targets across Lebanon in 10 minutes, okay? The largest coordinated strike of the war, and they've killed at least 254 people in Beirut after the ceasefire has been signed, okay? The UN human rights chief called Israel's actions nothing short of horrific, saying such carnage within hours of agreeing to a ceasefire defies belief. So what did Iran do? They closed the Strait of Hormuz again. The ceasefire that Trump called total victory literally collapsed before we woke up, folks. It's just a joke, man. And Trump has already commented on this stuff. He said, it's a separate skirmish between Lebanon and Israel. And it's just, if you're not groaning while you listen to this, I don't know what to tell you, because this is really, really crazy. It's crazy. And so at the end of the day, what happened, right? Where are we? Well, Netanyahu got his 40-year dream. America got a 2-week ceasefire that Israel shredded within hours. A 10-point negotiation framework that starts from Iran's position. And basically the only people who stopped things from getting worse was a podcast host and a former QAnon congresswoman. That's where we are. That's total and complete victory in Trump's America. And that's our show, folks. Thank you so much for listening today. If you like the show, please give it a 5-star review or like and subscribe wherever you listen. I really appreciate it. But Jesus Christ, what a stretch, man. I definitely got a few grays from this weekend, and I'm sure many of you did too. My God, if there's ever been a time, if you guys want to tune out from the news, now is the time. Well, I got you. Let me eat your sin. Me and Rick will cover the news on Sunday. And, of course, I always encourage people to do their own research. But, oh boy, if you want to take a break, I do not blame you whatsoever. And hang in there. We'll be back on Sunday. Yikes. My God, what a country, huh? What a country. I walked in there and I said, wow, what a country. All right, I'll talk to you later, guys. See ya.